So Android, it's been around for about 10 years now, and it all started with the release of the T-Mobile G1 back on September 23rd, 2008. But here's a question. Why did Google bother making Android in the first place? When you think about smartphone battles today, you pretty much think of it as Android versus iPhone, and that's how it is. But back before the iPhone, heck, even right after the iPhone came out, the world looked a whole lot different. Phones were actually relatively small. They fit in the palm of your hand, and most of them didn't have touch displays. If you did have a smartphone, chances are you were either in IT, you worked on Wall Street, or you were a huge nerd, like me. Anyway, here's how things looked back in 2007. BlackBerry was kind of the king because its devices were simple, they were fast, and they had super long battery life. Palm was running out the clock on Palm OS and trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Nokia was doing some Symbian stuff, and basically everybody else was making Windows Mobile devices, which went from Pocket PC to Windows Mobile when Microsoft started focusing more on phones, but this was before Windows Phone existed. Anyway, the point is, Microsoft was trying to replicate the Windows PC business model, but with phones. So it partnered with Samsung and Motorola and HP and HTC and a bunch of other smaller manufacturers. And a lot of these smartphones felt like overgrown PDAs with antennas tacked onto them. But that was starting to change by the time the iPhone rolled around. This right here, this is the Moto Q, the original. It ran Windows Mobile and it came out in 2006. Now, I'm not saying that this was the best smartphone back then, but it was actually in the running, and there are some really cool things about it. It's got this backlit QWERTY keyboard here, it's got this dope jog dial, and it was one of the phones that made people realize that something nerdy like a smartphone could actually be accessible to more people. Anyway, this thing, this kind of gadgety, dorky looking phone right here, or more specifically, phones that are just like it, they were the thing that made Google think that it needed to do Android. Okay, so why do we know that? Well, let's start with some, circumstantial evidence. Take a look at this thing. This is the Sooner. It was the very first prototype of an Android phone. It looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? It looks kind of like the Moto Q, eh? Or kind of like this other phone, which came out a little bit later. It's the Trio Pro. Fun fact, I heard that when Palm was in really bad places, it went to HTC and basically took something HTC had already been developing and had them turn it into this Windows Mobile Trio for them. It's possible that this Windows Mobile Trio device right here is what the Sooner sort of maybe eventually turned into, maybe. Anyway, it was phones like this and the Samsung Blackjack and the Moto Q that showed that Microsoft was maybe getting closer to actually kind of knowing what it was doing in mobile. And so Google saw these phones and it decided it needed to gun for Microsoft, not Apple at the time. So it bought Andy Rubin's Android company and it got to work. Maybe you've read this famous story about how Andy Rubin reacted to the launch of the first iPhone. According to an article in The Atlantic, he was in a car watching the keynote, and when he saw the iPhone, he said, "Holy crap, I guess we're not gonna ship that phone," except he didn't say it like strong bad, because he's not strong bad. Anyway, when he said we're not gonna ship that phone, he meant the Sooner, because compared to the iPhone, it looked instantly dated. It looked like these Windows Mobile phones. Now, according to Diane Hackthorne, a Google engineer at the time, she said that the decision to drop Sooner was well before the iPhone announcement, though we continued to use it for quite a while internally for development, since it was the only semi-stable hardware platform that we had. Whichever version of the story is true, the end result was this, the HTC G1, which was codenamed Dream. It was the first commercially available phone that ran Android, and it was unveiled a year and some change after the iPhone. Now, compared to the Sooner, this is much more advanced. It has a touchscreen, for example. And compared to Windows Mobile phones, it also feels pretty advanced. It has a landscape keyboard that you can type on, and this cool sidekick-looking flip-up thing, and it's got a scroll ball, and you can also, put SD card in it. This is a super gadgety gadget, and using it, looking at it, you can really tell that they were more focused on getting business users and taking on Windows Mobile than they were just trying to take on the iPhone. So I admit, this is all circumstantial evidence, and you probably want actual evidence. And you know what makes really good evidence? Actual evidence. Google's former CEO said that Android was about taking on Windows Mobile. One of the bigger tech trials of the past decade was Google versus Oracle. Tech trials are great because you get testimony. You get executives on the witness stand and they have to answer questions. And Oracle really needed to talk about the early days of Android to prove its case. So here's the transcript of the jury trial proceedings of Oracle v. Google from April 24th, 2012. Oracle's lawyers are questioning Eric Schmidt about the origins of Android. And Eric Schmidt answers, "We were quite concerned about Microsoft's products. It's hard to relate to that now, but at the time, we were very concerned that Microsoft's mobile strategy would be successful." This was before the iPhone was announced and before the whole iPhone revolution occurred. So honestly, there you have it. The whole structure of how Android works was designed to undercut Windows Mobile. Samsung and LG and HTC, basically most of the companies that were making phones back then were making Windows Mobile phones, and Google got them to make Android phones too, and then make them basically exclusively. That was the trick. That's why you have an entire ecosystem of Android phone partners. Google knew all of these companies would want to make phones, so it knew it had to make the operating system those phones would run. Google wanted for phones what Microsoft had on the desktop: scale. They wanted Android on every phone, because more Android customers meant more searches, which means more money for Google, because Google makes all its money off of people using search, and that's how they paid for Android. Giving Android away for free actually made Google more money because more people were using it, and it undercut Microsoft, which was making companies pay a license fee for Windows. The bottom line is, if you've ever wondered why Android works the way it does, why even today there's still weird quirks like menus and back buttons and whatever, don't look at the iPhone. You should actually take a look back, way back, at the Moto Q, because this is what they were trying to compete with. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. We're probably gonna do some more of these history videos, so let me know what moments in Android's history you're interested in, or let me know what you're nostalgic for, because god damn, I love this little phone. It's so nerdy, it's got a trackball. It also doesn't have a headphone jack, so take that, every phone made right now, I guess. Anyway.